So for today's topic, it is about quadratic equation. When we say quadratic equation, ang mga dapat nating tandaan ay ang kanyang degree or the exponent or the highest exponent. So pag sinabi kasi natin quadratic equation, ito yung may exponent na pinakamataas na ang 2, pero hindi siya pwedeng bumaba ng 2. So ibig sabihin, kapag ang exponent ng isang equation ay 1 or more than 2, which is 3, 4, 5, and so on, then it is not considered as quadratic equation. So let's move. So a quadratic equation is an equation of the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a, b, and c are the real numbers. And a must not equal, so dapat hindi siya equal to 0. Then, in equation, yung ax squared natin is the quadratic term, and the bx is the linear term, and c is the constant. Para mas madalian nating itindihin, kapag ka ito ay ang variable natin ay may exponent na 2, then that is the quadratic term. Kapag ka yung ating variable naman ay ang exponent niya ay 1, then that is linear term. And then kapag ka naman walang variable na kasama or number lang siya, then that is the constant. So I have here the equation below. 5x squared plus 3x plus 3 is equal to 0. So this is a quadratic equation. Then the standard form, and also it is the standard form. So pag sinabi naman nating standard form, it is equal to 0. So let's so ang gagawin natin, we will proceed later to the standard form. But for now, we will identify each equation if it is quadratic or not quadratic. So I have here different examples of equation, and we will identify if each equation is a quadratic or not quadratic equation. So in the first one, so yung first equation natin is x squared plus 10x plus 9 is equal to 0. So this is considered as quadratic equation. So bakit nga po ba siya quadratic equation? So sa quadratic equation, again, we are considering the degree or the exponent. So since yung exponent natin ay 2, then wala na naman tayong sinisimplify, then it is considered agad na quadratic equation. So next is sa ating number 2 equation. So we have x squared minus 10x is equal to negative 21. So this is a quadratic equation as well. So kung makikita nyo, bakit po yung dun sa example kanina is dapat equal to 0? So take note, quadratic equation can be rearranged, no? So hindi lang siya laging ganun ang form. So sometimes iba-iba siya ng pwesto. But as long we have the degree or the exponent of 2 na pinakamataas na, that is we can identify that that equation is a quadratic. Pero katulad nga nito, no, hindi siya equal to 0, pero dahil ang ating exponent ay 2 and we cannot simplify it na dahil yan na mismo yan, then we can consider this equation as quadratic. So next equation is x, or the quantity of x plus 3 squared is equal to 0. So this is considered as well quadratic. Bakit po siya quadratic? So let me show you. So kaya po siya quadratic dahil when we simplify it, so dito natin isolve. Pag sinimplify natin, so x plus 3 times x plus 3, diba ang exponent natin is considered is you are multiplying the base to itself. So ibig sabihin, ito yung base natin, and then when we multiply x times x, it is equal to x squared. Then multiply natin tong x times 3, is equal to positive 3x. Then, yung inner natin na 3 times x is equal to positive 3x. And then, yung 3 times 3 natin is equal to plus 9 or positive 9. Then, it is equal to 0. Since there is a similar term or pareha siya ng term which is yung 3x, then, ang gagawin natin ay i-combine natin. So, ang mangyayari dyan ay x squared plus, so 3x plus 3x is equal to 6x, then plus 9 is equal to 0. So, if nakita natin itong equation na to na na-simplify na natin, we can identify that this one is quadratic equation. So, let's proceed to the fourth equation, which is x plus 5 is equal to 0. So, dahil ang ating highest degree dito ay 1, therefore, sa ating definition ng quadratic, the highest degree must be 2. So, ibig sabihin, itong ating fourth equation is not quadratic. So, this is not quadratic equation. So, next naman natin is yung x squared plus 25. X squared is equal to 25. So, this one is considered as quadratic equation as well. Dahil nga, meron tayong highest degree na 2 or the quadratic term. Next naman nating equation is yung x cube plus 10x plus 9 is equal to 0. So, this one is, since ang ating highest exponent ay 3, then the identification of this is not quadratic equation. So, next is the quantity of x squared minus 4x square is equal to 0. So, if we are going to simplify this equation, so x squared and then raised to 2, ang magiging sagot niyan ay x raised to 4. So, dito pa lang, sa una natin pagsisimplify, nakita na agad natin na ang kanyang exponent ay 4. So, therefore, we can consider it agad na this equation is not quadratic equation. So, next is the quantity of x plus 3 times x is equal to 0. So, when we simplify this one, x times x is equal to x squared, and then 3 times x is equal to positive 3x. Then, it is equal to 0. So, based on the equation na sinimplify natin, this equation is considered as quadratic equation. So, next one is x or the quantity of x plus 5 times the quantity of x plus 5 is equal to 0. This one is katulad lang ng ginawa natin dito. So, we are going to do the FOIL method. So, x times x is equal to x squared. Then, x times 5 is equal to positive 5x. Then, 5 times x is equal to positive 5x. And then, 5 times 5 is equal to 25. So, plus 25. So, combine like terms or similar terms, then the answer will be x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 0. So, this equation is considered as quadratic equation. And then the last one is x squared is equal to negative 3x. So, since meron tayong highest degree na 2, then this equation is considered as quadratic equation. So, again, to simplify or to identify if the equation is quadratic, simplify it first if it is needed. Then, consider the degree or the highest degree must be 2. So, yun po ang pinaka-highest na degree. So, kapag ka ang degree or the exponent is 1 or more than 2, which is 3, 4, 5, and so on, then this is not considered as quadratic equation. So, next, after identifying the equation if it is quadratic or not quadratic, now let's proceed to transforming the quadratic equation into standard form. So, like what I said, so kahit hindi siya in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, it can be or it can identify as quadratic equation. Pero, meron tayong tinatawag na standard form niya. So, pag sinabi nating standard form, dapat ang ating equation ay equal to 0 and the a or real number a or the coefficient of the quadratic term must be positive. So, pag negative ang ating quadratic term, kailangan nating i-transform siya into positive, and then if hindi naman siya equal to 0, we need to make it equal to 0. So, how can we do that? So, let me give you an example. So, sa ating example number 1, so we have negative x squared plus 10x minus 9 is equal to 0. Since this equation is equal to 0, no need to make it in equal to 0. But the quadratic term is negative. So, dahil sabi nga natin yung a natin should be positive or not equal to 0 or negative, dapat gagawin natin siyang positive. How can we make it positive? So, ang gagawin natin ay let's multiply it to negative. So, the whole equation, so we will multiply the whole equation into a negative. So, ang gagawin natin, multiply it to negative and then proceed tayo sa pagsisimplify. So, negative times negative x squared is equal to positive x squared. Plus, negative times negative 10x is equal to negative 10x. And then negative times negative 9. So, negative times negative is equal to positive, then 9 is equal to 0. Now, our equation is now in standard form. So, bakit ba natin kailangang i-transform ang ating quadratic equation into standard form? So, you will know and you will see later kung saan natin gagamitin at bakit importante siya. So, next natin is example number 2. So, this is x squared minus 10x is equal to negative 21. Since our quadratic term is now positive, but this equation is not equal to 0, we will make it equal to 0. So, paano ba natin gagawing equal to 0 to? So, ang gagawin lang natin ay we will transpose. So, if you know the term, transpose. Pag nagta-transpose tayo, the number or the term that we are transposing is yung sign niya nagbabago. Kailangan nating baguhin. Basta tumatawid siya sa equal sign, kailangan magbabago yung kanyang sign. So, ang mangyayari, pag tinranspose natin yan, so magiging positive 21. So, therefore, the equation will become x squared minus 10x. So, kinapi ko lang siya kasi wala naman tayong binago. Then, tinranspose ko, magiging plus 21. Then, equal to 0 na natin. Then, now this is our standard form. Okay, next. Sa third equation natin. So, for our third equation, so para maging standard form siya na ax plus bx o ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So, kailangan natin siyang i-simplify. So, ang mangyayari, katulad lang ng ginawa natin, we can simplify it as first expand it, x plus 3 times x plus 3 is equal to 0. Then next is use the FOIL method. So x times x is equal to x squared. Then x times 3 is equal to 3x. Then next natin is 3 times x is equal to 3x. Then followed by 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Then equal to 0. Then simplify the similar term or like terms. Then magiging x squared. Then 3x plus 3x is equal to 6x. Then next natin is copy the 9. Then equal to 0. So now this is the standard form of our equation. Next is this x squared is equal to 25. So paano ba natin gagawin standard form? So transpose lang natin. So x squared minus 25 is equal to 0. Ayan. So if you are going to ask me, bakit po wala po yung ating linear term? So sa ating quadratic equation and also standard form, if the linear term is not given, okay lang. It is also considered basta equal to 0 at may quadratic term tayo, it is considered as standard form. If wala namang constant pero may linear term, it's the same. Wag lang mawawala ang ating quadratic term and the standard form will be equal to 0. So now, you know how to transform or write the equation or the quadratic equation into standard form. So now, let's proceed kung bakit nga ba natin kailangan i-write or i-transform ang ating quadratic equation into standard form. So, dahil we are going to identify the quadratic, the linear, and the constant term. So, sa pag-transform into quadratic or into standard form, kailangan natin yan dito para ma-identify yung quadratic, linear, and constant term. So, if you can see, this equation is now in standard form. So, kung wala pa siya sa standard form, please gawin nating standard form ang ating equation bago tayo mag-identify ng quadratic, linear, and constant term. So, here, to identify the quadratic, linear, and constant term, so dito lang tayo titingin sa ating mga equation. So, the quadratic term lagi is this whole. So, x squared. The linear term, yung sinasabi ko, yung variable niya ay may isang exponent lang. But of course, we will include the coefficient and its sign. And then, yung constant term natin is yung ating positive 9. So, now to identify the quadratic, the linear, and constant term, in this equation, the quadratic term is x squared. The linear term is negative 10x. So, take note, I considered or I include the negative sign. So, the linear term is negative 10x. So, hindi lang po siya negative 10, hindi lang po siya x. Kailangan buong linear term. Then, the constant term is positive 9. So, in this equation, so second equation natin, so the quadratic term is positive 4x squared. The linear term is negative 12x. And the constant term is positive 9. So, next equation natin sa x squared minus 6x plus 9. The quadratic term is x squared. The linear term is negative 6x and the constant term is 9. So, next natin is the x squared minus 25 is equal to 0. So, dito sa ating equation, so, the quadratic term is x squared. So, the linear term, so sabi natin ang linear term, ito dapat yung may variable na ang exponent niya ay 1. So, since wala tayong linear term, then the value of the linear term is 0. Next is, the constant term is negative 25. If you are going to ask, ma'am, paano po if merong linear term pero walang constant term? So let me give you an example. So let's say this is x squared minus 10x is equal to 0. So for example, ganyan. So the quadratic term is x squared. The linear term is equal to negative 10x. And the constant term, since wala tayong constant, then it is equal to 0. So wag lang tayo mawawalan ng quadratic term. So now, we know how to identify the quadratic, linear, and constant term. Since alam na natin paano mag-identify, we will proceed to identifying the real numbers A, B, and C. So sa pag-identify natin ng real numbers A, B, and C, para lang din siyang identifying ng quadratic term, linear term, and constant term. What is the difference between the two? Pag sinabi kasi nating real numbers A, B, and C, ang kukunin lang natin is yung value ng A, B, and C, which is the coefficient. So, eto yung mga coefficient or the real numbers. Ayan, coefficient. Yung ibig sabihin, hindi nakasama yung mga letters. So, yun yung ating mga real numbers. So, now, let's try to identify the real numbers. So, for example, I have here the equation na first is 5x squared plus 3x plus 10 is equal to 0. So, saan ko ba nakuha yung real number A na 5? So, yung A natin is makukuha natin sa quadratic term. Or, ayan po yung quadratic term natin. Kung ano po yung coefficient niya, yun po ang ating real number A. So, this is the coefficient of our quadratic term. Therefore, this is the real number A. Take note, isasama natin yung sign. So, you'll see later. So, yung B natin sa nakuha sa coefficient ng ating linear term, which is yung ating 3. And then, yung constant term natin, ito yung constant lang natin or yung walang variable, which is yung ating 10. So, now, let's proceed to example number 2. So, ang real number A natin, makikita natin sa quadratic term. Since walang number yan, that is automatic 1. So, therefore, real number A is equal to 1. Next is the linear term or yung real number B natin. Makukuha natin siya sa linear term. So, yung coefficient niya ay negative 9. So, take note, isasama natin yung sign. So, therefore, B is equal to negative 9. And then, the constant is positive 2. So, for example, 3, ganun lang din siya. But of course, sabi nga, di ba, bago natin ma-identify ang quadratic, linear, and constant term, kailangan naka-standard form. As well, sa ating linear, sa ating real numbers A, B, and C. So, since etong equation natin ay quadratic equation pero hindi siya naka-linear term, ay standard form, we need to make it in standard form. So, ang gagawin natin, transpose lang itong 6, kaya magiging negative 6. So, eto na siya ngayon. So, x squared minus 5x minus 6 is equal to 0. So, dahil naka-standard form na siya, we can identify the real numbers A, B, and C. So, real number A is equal to 1 dahil 1 yung dito natin. Real number B is negative 5. Ito yon. And then, the constant is negative 6. So, for example, number 4, again, this is not quadratic or in standard form, but this is a quadratic equation. So, ang gagawin natin, since the quadratic term is negative, we can transpose it to the other side so that it becomes positive 3x squared. So, this is a long process. So, para di na kayo malito, no? This is a long process. So now we have the standard form, and it is equal to 0. We can identify the real numbers A, B, and C. So yung A natin is 3 from the quadratic term. Yung real number B natin is 1 dahil automatic we have 1 here. And then the constant is positive 2. So ngayon, we know how to identify the real numbers A, B, and C. So that's all. And see you for our next topic about quadratic equation.